What if I told you that Law went underground and did something huge in the middle of the Wano arc? It's actually beyond mind-blowing how nobody's talking about this when this changes everything. This man Law went underground and found a real poneglyph that's going to tell us not only the connection between Wano and Shandora, but the location of the ancient weapon Uranus. A lot of you guys think you're subscribed to my channel, but you're not, so scroll down, hit the like and subscribe button for more One Piece content. And today's One Piece theory is actually brought to you by a One Piece content creator, a great friend of mine named Joe 3 Skull Theories.
How's it going, everyone? Thanks for having me. I'm Joe 3 Skull Theories. I make One Piece theory and analysis threads on Twitter. You can find me on there.
So during chapter 996 of One Piece, during the Wano arc, we see Law come across a peculiar item, a peculiar moment in the Wano arc, and I just need you to address that for me really quickly, Joe.
So in chapter 996, we see Law has completely ignored the battle for some reason, teleported down to what seems to be the basement floor, and he's in front of a poneglyph.
Right, and there's very few moments in the story where we see characters come across these poneglyphs. Generally, when they do, it happens to mean a lot, whether it tells us where an ancient weapon is, stuff about the world history. Like, these are very specific moments that Oda's putting into the story that's going to lead towards Luffy finding the One Piece. So this moment for Law finding a poneglyph is going to mean something. This is not just a random occurrence during the story.
It's strange it was in the manga, then it hasn't come up again since, especially after the last chapter. It seems it's going to be very important very soon.
Right, I don't think Oda introduced it for no reason. It's gonna have to be brought up. I totally agree, and I'm thinking brought up towards Robin, Luffy, and co. I don't think this is some information that Law would keep to himself. I think this is going to be given towards the Straw Hats, and it's going to contain some type of information. But just kind of going off that, do we have any kind of idea on what type of poneglyph this is? Because we know that there's multiple types of poneglyphs in the One Piece world.
So we know it can't be one of the road poneglyphs. The Law comments that it's not one of the red ones. That's what he is looking for, one of the road poneglyphs. The only one that's missing from its place of origin is the one that was on Fishman Island. We haven't yet got confirmation on that location yet. There are other kinds of poneglyphs other than the 4 road poneglyphs. There's the 9 Rio poneglyphs, or the real poneglyphs. These are the ones that are introduced in Alabasta. Once you collect all 9 of them, they combine to create the real poneglyph, which explains the true history.
What kind of evidence leads towards you thinking that? Because could be like another informational poneglyph, right? Is there like some kind of trend going on for real poneglyphs in One Piece?
So with the real poneglyphs, we know of 4 of them so far. They always appear in places of significance. You've got the one in Skypiea, which reveals the location of Poseidon being Fishman Island. You've got the one in Alabasta, recently revealed to reveal the location of Pluton in Wano. And you've got the one in the Tree of Knowledge, which we don't know what it revealed yet. There's lots of good theories out there, such as some of your own. Perhaps it tells the location of Uranus, and that is Elbaf. There's a big trend with these going on. It seems if there's an important poneglyph that Kaido would put a shrine around, it's going to be one of those that's about the true history.
Exactly. They made a whole big shrine around this poneglyph. I don't see why Kaido and co would do that if it didn't mean something deep. And just like you said, we see a pattern in the story where these real poneglyphs not only tell the true history of the world piece by piece, but also have the location of an ancient weapon. So I totally agree with you on that part. Now, if I'm not mistaken, at some point in the story of One Piece, we had some type of dialogue that infers the Kazukis are some kind of weavers of history and that some kind of bell was going on. I believe there's some type of tie between Wano and Shandora going on, but I kind of need you to clarify that for me if you can.
Chapter 8:18, Inside the Whale, Nekomamushi explains that the Kazuki clan were the ones who created the poneglyphs, and they were the famous stonemasons from the Void Century. In hindsight, you can go back to Skypiea with this information, and Robin discovered the ruined city of Shandora, and she goes and she notices that all of the books of the city were burned. The entire history of Shandora was lost. Some poneglyphs were taken to this city, I'm sure of it. The city once had to fight an enemy, and then she goes in, she finds the remains of the ancient city below layers of cloud. When Robin finds several poneglyphs in this ancient city, she finds one that seems to be in the shape of a door, strangely, and she says the creators of those writings were the only ones who could use them. This poneglyph reads, "Before the heart of truth, there is no need for words. We are the recorders of history. history, together with the sound of the Great Bell. We know that the Kozuki were the recorders of history, and we know the Great Bell is from Shandora. This suggests that Wano and Shandora were once connected, and this can be reinforced when you consider we learned that Wano was once called the country of gold.
And then when you take a look at Shandora, it's literally like made out of gold. So there's heavy implications and what I would call a safe headcanon that Wano and Shandora are connected. I might even go as far as to say that Wano, or like Onigashima, is a part of the missing Eye of Jaya. Do you find that to be plausible as well?
I think so. I've got a theory about that I made last year, that Wano is the missing Eye of Jaya. Got lots of details. Even their culture is similar. References to the sun god in both arcs. The bonfire festivals they have in honor of the dead in both arcs. The references to the country of gold. There's so many things about the two that are paralleled, that they must be connected. That statement from that poneglyph pretty much says it. It spells it out effectively as far as I'm concerned.
And I believe it's going to be Law visiting this poneglyph in particular that ties this all together. And this is the reason we think that Law in particular found a real poneglyph in the Wano arc. Now, as far as them being connected, I believe there is a small detail in Skypiea and Shandora that suggests that there's multiple missing poneglyphs going on. Do you know anything about that?
So when you go to chapter 272, Robin discovered the ruins of the ancient city. She comments that the golden city of Shandora was destroyed after fighting to protect the poneglyphs. This event was somewhere between 800 and 400 years ago. When you go back to Nolan's flashback, the tower was still covered in its gold. You go to when Robin discovers the tower, no gold remains. There's a curious detail in that tower. Actually, if you go to the upper levels of the tower, you see there are 8 square cubic indentations in the tower, suggesting that poneglyphs were also once in this level of the tower. This suggests to us that these 8 poneglyphs, the Rio poneglyphs, were removed and taken to other locations for safekeeping. It would make sense if one of them was taken to Wano for safekeeping, since Wano and Shandora would be close allies at the time.
And just even from like a broad kind of aspect, for Shandora to be attacked by, you know, current world government, or at least their ancestors, they would want to scatter the poneglyphs all around the world. This was a very intentional plot device, but intentional by the Kazukis, Joy Boy, and etc. themselves. If they have it only in one location, the world government could just bomb that location, destroy it, take the poneglyphs. It makes more sense for them to spread it out. Being that Wano itself is not only prominent to the main plotline of One Piece, but like you said, tied to the Kazukis, it just makes so much sense to have one of those real poneglyphs in Wano. Now, as far as finding more poneglyphs in Wano, I believe the extras will be road poneglyphs, and what we just previously seen with Law would be a Rio poneglyph. And that's actually not all the evidence for why Law had to have found a Rio poneglyph in Wano, because there's something very peculiar in Shandora and Skypiea that we just have to point out.
She notices, makes an offhand remark, all of the books in the city were burned. Their entire history was lost. But Professor Clover is interrogating the 5 Elder Stars. He questions them on why do you need to encarve this encrypted message into stone? Well, it was because they thought if it was preserved in any other way, in books or in song, it would be destroyed. This is reinforced when you go back to this scene in Skypiea. Robin comments that Shandora was attacked and all of its history was erased, all of their books were destroyed. So this suggests that the Shandorians were depending on the people of Wano, the Kozuki, to preserve this history and scatter it around the world. So Wano themselves would take 1 or 2 of the most important of these poneglyphs, a road poneglyph and a Rio poneglyph.
And this actually ties into the theme of inherited will in One Piece. Whenever we see a character die or go through some type of hardship, they pass on their dreams, wills, and aspirations onto other people. Seeing how Shandora had this legendary history that we don't know the full context of yet, it's interesting to see the Kazukis and Wano spread the poneglyphs and make sure they're safekept around the world to continue the legacy of Shandora, the Lunarians, etc. I look at Wano and the Kazukis almost like the will inheritors to Shandora. So they must be connected on a very deep level, which yet again reinforces what Law found was in fact a Rio poneglyph. And now seeing how like the Rio poneglyphs are in a trend right now where they tell us information about the world and then information about an ancient weapon, where do you think that this ancient weapon could be located and why?
I believe that the ancient weapon would likely be in Elbaf. There's a big pattern between the Rio poneglyphs, the road poneglyphs, and this sort of alliance of the ancient kingdom. And I think Elbaf is certainly going to be one of them. You can suggest this by going to the plot thread of the two sovereign, because when you go to this plot thread, we find out that the Sea Kings are waiting on the two sovereign. Soon the two sovereign will meet again. We know that one of these sovereign is Shirahoshi, who also we know to be Poseidon. The poneglyph revealing that Poseidon's location was Fishman Island was in Skypiea, in the city of Shandora. So that idea that Wano is the inheritor of the will of Shandora, this suggests that Shandora was perhaps the location of the failed previous meeting of the two sovereign. So you take this idea that they had the poneglyph for Poseidon in Skypiea or Shandora. Alabasta had the one revealing Pluton's location. What about the giants? Well, actually, if you go to the mythology of Ragnarok, the whole story is about the end of the world, you know, everything collapsing around. We have lots of indications that's going to happen in One Piece or something to that effect. The world getting turned upside down, the balance of power collapsing, the great cleansing. There's going to be this massive incident that's going to occur later on, perhaps in Elbaf. And if you go to that mythology of Ragnarok, actually the story ends with the world being saved by two human saviors. If there's going to be a location for this last ancient weapon, it has to be Elbaf.
And I totally agree. There's been way too much buildup towards the island of Elbaf pretty much the entire story. Back in Little Garden, Usopp proclaimed multiple times that he will visit Elbaf, become friends with the giants, and all that kind of stuff. It would make no sense for us to not go to Elbaf and at least get some significant event there. I don't think Elbaf would be a 5-chapter long arc where we see Shanks and then just kind of leave. I don't see the point of that. Knowing we still need the final road poneglyph, we need the ancient weapons. Whether it's the poneglyph or the ancient weapons, obviously I'm leaning towards the ancient weapons. Something significant and huge would have to happen through the Elbaf arc. And even then, like seeing all the Norse mythology behind Elbaf, Shanks, etc., it would make a lot of sense for the ancient weapon of Uranus to be tied in with Norse mythology as well. So I was just wondering if you had any kind of context or ideas for the ancient weapon Uranus, what was kind of running through your mind as well?
When we see Elbaf in Big Mom's flashback, we always see a silhouette of this gigantic tree. This is most likely based on the tree of Yggdrasil, very famous in Norse mythology. When you go to Norse mythology, Yggdrasil is actually the tree or the god tree that Asgard sits on top of. Below the tree you have Midgard, and above the tree you have Asgard and several other realms. And actually when you go into the mythology of Uranus itself, the giants were created from the blood of Uranus. Pause.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
And that would make a lot of sense because there's been so much emphasis on giants in the story of One Piece. You know Elbaf is heavily tied to giants because of Big Mom's flashback, the gigantification science test. Like there's so much emphasis on giants. So to say that giants are going to be connected to an ancient weapon, that's not far-fetched at all. Especially when you look at how merfolk, fishmen, etc. are connected to Poseidon. So I don't think that's a reach at all. Although I do have another option for the ancient weapon of Uranus I gotta present. A recent video of mine, I did talk about how that tree in Elbaf may be inspired by the tree of Yggdrasil. Well, it turns out that there's 3 different groups of animals that correlate with the tree. At the bottom towards underneath the tree, there's a dragon known as Nidhogg. Then there's 4 stags, aka deer. And then there's an unnamed eagle that was labeled as a sky god. In my recent Shanks video, I talk about how he's possibly the conductor of the ancient weapon Uranus, and an unnamed eagle on the tree of Yggdrasil would be Uranus itself. I find both of these options between something connected to giants or even this unnamed eagle to be very good options, being that they both fit in really well. And honestly, I'm kind of 50-50 torn on it, but of course I would love to take the flowers to take a W with it being an eagle.
This was actually pitched to me by one of my friends on Twitter, goes by the name Peace Idea. There's a lot of mythology about a fruit from ash trees called manna. These are suggested to have given those who consumed them powers of the berserker. These fruits, they look almost like nuts, but actually they're the exact same shape as Chopper's Rumble Ball and Caesar's NHC-10 pills. Then you go to, why have the government been trying to recreate giants for centuries? Why have they stuck to that for centuries on end? Or perhaps they're trying to recreate the ancient weapon Uranus.
And this would make a lot of sense given that Big Mom already had dialogue that if she had giants on her team, if she had the correct Elbaf giants, that she would take over the world. This might be a hint towards Uranus, or even, you know, what's related to Uranus. Again, there's just so much emphasis on giants in One Piece, and given all this lore within the story of One Piece, real world, all that kind of stuff, it would be a good assumption or a good theory to go with Uranus being affiliated with the blood or lineage factors of giants. So essentially, Law was underground in Wano and found a very important poneglyph that we believe to be a real poneglyph. This real poneglyph will tell us the connection between Wano and Shandora, but also the location of the ancient weapon Uranus. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe video to my site if you want to check it out. It's a banger buggy theory, but me and Joe really appreciate it. Any last goodbyes, Joe?
I want to say thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me pitch the theory on your channel. I've really enjoyed discussing it with you. Very interested to see which way it goes.
And make sure you guys check out his content. Great guy on Twitter. Banger theories, banger takes. Great guy. Link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.